From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Rob Westgate. 11 people have been killed in Lebanon following an early Sunday airstrike in the country's northeast. 6 of the bodies were recovered from under the rubble as the search continued for the remaining 5 victims. Meanwhile, thousands of people have gathered across Iran to protest the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in an earlier Israeli airstrike. That airstrike also killed a senior officer in Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Iran helped establish Hezbollah back in the 1980s and has provided the Lebanese militant group with sophisticated weaponry and training. Saskatchewan's George Gordon First Nation says a geophysical search has identified 8 anomalies that suggest possible graves or burials near the site of a former residential school. They say the findings are consistent in size, shape, depth, and pattern. Gordon's Indian Residential School was the last federally funded residential school in Canada, closing back in 1996. Chief Sean Longman says it's important for the community to continue the searches, even though memories of abuse and suffering are likely to resurface. Striking workers at the Metro Vancouver grain terminal are returning to work ahead of a new labor agreement being ratified next week. The tentative deal between Grain Workers Union Local 333 and the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association saw the picket lines removed Saturday, ending the strike that had paralyzed grain shipments. Canadian grain producers had urged a resolution in the dispute, noting that about 52% of the country's grains moved through the Metro Vancouver terminals last year en route to being exported. Some 200 pages of research compiled by the BC United Party before it dropped out of the provincial election is now being used by the NDP to depict BC Conservative candidates as conspiracy theorists. 2 members of the BC United admitted the documents were theirs, but they deny being the sources of the leak. One suggested the Conservatives themselves could be the source of the leak in an attempt to rip off the Band-Aid, and the other said up to 8 people within BC United had access to the research. And finally, Life as a Highway songwriter Tom Cochrane was ushered into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame on Saturday, an honor he says that left him overcome with emotion. But he insists his goal when it comes to penning songs is always about making great music, not big hits.
I've never sat down to write a hit. I sit down to try to write songs that are going to resonate with myself first and foremost, because I think as songwriters, I feel like I'm a therapist. First and foremost to myself, and you hope that it resonates with other people.
Cochrane was one of 4 Hall of Fame inductees at the celebration. The others were Sarah McLachlan, Quebec singer Diane Tell, and Blue Rodeo's Greg Keeler and Jim Cuddy. This is the Canadian Press. In sports, Liram Hajrullahu kicked a CFL record-tying 8 field goals, lifting the Toronto Argonauts to a 37-31 win over the Montreal Alouettes. Toronto moved to within a point of second-place Ottawa and sits 4 points ahead of fourth-place Hamilton. Earlier, the Saskatchewan Roughriders moved into second place in the CFL's West Division with a 29-16 win over the Ottawa Redblacks. In Major League Soccer action, the Vancouver Whitecaps used a 1-1 draw with the Portland Timbers to clinch a playoff berth. CF Montreal earned 3 crucial points in a 3-0 win over the league-worst San Jose Earthquakes, and the Chicago Fire played to a 1-1 draw with Toronto FC. Over to the Diamond now, where the Miami Marlins dumped the Toronto Blue Jays 8-1 in an interleague battle of last-place teams. And in NHL preseason, Toronto topped Montreal 2-1, Edmonton edged Seattle 5-4, and Calgary doubled Vancouver 4-2. From the Canadian Press, I'm Rob Westgate.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.